Hi there. Welcome to another edition of The Other Tom Green Show. I had a cool honor this past year. I was inducted into the Colorado Broadcasters Association Hall of Fame. Went in with a great class, people like Mark Cornetta, who I'd worked for and with for many years over at Channel 9, and Murphy Houston, Denise Plant from radio. I mean, just wonderful people. But it was great. But they ask you to speak, and I spoke about my career a little bit, but it was in preparing to do that, I really became self-educated because I've always heard people at various sports Hall of Fames refer to how humbling it can be. And I never really understood it. I thought it was a great line, but I never really understood it until I was asked to speak about myself or my career, because it is humbling. You realize that much of your career, if not most of your career, really was a gift from fate, from the people you worked with, and also the people you worked against. I was lucky because I worked with wonderful people over the years at Channel 9 and Channel 7 and The Fan, people like we talked about this week, our old friend Doug Moe, Dan Issel on the radio, so many great friends, Kim Christensen for years at 9. And one person who fit both sides of that, competing with and working with, was Ron Zappolo. I competed against, if you will, in sportscasting when I started out at Channel 9 for many years, the people who worked at Channel 4 and Channel 7. And you grew to understand how much better the people you worked on the other side of the street from made you, as well as the people you worked with. My sports office, I was lucky. I had Mike Nolan and Gary Cruz and guys like that who helped show me the way. But it was all those people across the street that also forced you to be the best you can be. And in preparing to speak at the Colorado Broadcasters Association Hall of Fame, I was reminded very much of how much of an impact everyone else has on your life, and how at times your impact on your own life can be somewhat marginal at best. I say that because today our guest is someone who I did compete against. My good friend Mark McIntosh is here. And with that, I bring in Mark McIntosh, who for years was over at Channel 4 when I was at Channel 9, and we were working across the street covering the same stories all the time.
But we hung out a lot together.
we hung out a lot and worked, not against each other, but in the ways you do compete in television, we certainly did that.
We really did. And I loved your monologue, and you mentioned two people that are near and dear to my heart, one being Ron.
Yeah.
Ron is the reason I'm in the sportscasting, or was in the sportscasting business. I was a young guy, fresh out of college, and I had gone to college on an athletic scholarship, but I got hurt shortly after, and so I was never able to play football and baseball, which I had signed a letter of intent at Mizzou to play. And so I just kind of staggered my way through college, got out, and I was moving around different jobs all over the country. I'm living in Denver back in 1983 when Ron Zappolo was doing a live shot from the Broncos locker room, John Elway's rookie year, when they had rallied to beat the Baltimore Colts. It was a great story.
His first big comeback,
And against the team that drafted him in the whole 9 yards. And I was feeling sorry for myself, wondering what the heck I was going to do with my life. And I'm watching Ron do this live shot from the Broncos locker room. I just had an epiphany. I want to be a sportscaster like Ron Zappolo.
I want to do that.
So I went back to Mizzou and got my master's in journalism and began my sportscasting career.
Well, Ron has, like I said, he had a great impact. Viewing him from across the street from 9 to Channel 4 at the time, he was a handful. He was the best sportscaster I think that the city's ever had, and he was. You had to really be ready to take him on every day, every night on TV. And then when he came over and worked at Channel 9, he and I became really close friends. And he meant a lot to me, as it still does. Means a lot to me as a great friend, and I'm sure as a coworker, he also influenced you quite a bit.
Oh, and I'm a young guy. 2 years in the biz. I started in the 117th market, the rookie league down in Harlingen, Texas. And I come up here, and the first thing I did, I said, Ron, you're the reason I'm in this business. And he was like, oh, whatever. I go, no, I'm serious. And then I was just amazed watching him work because Ron didn't write scripts.
Nope.
Ron would just write a couple of notes, and he'd just go out there and basically ad-lib the whole thing.
And nail it.
And, you know, yeah, so he, and, you know, Ron and I have remained close over the years, but he's the reason that I had a wonderful career here in Denver for 20-some years.
You covered everything, but I always felt it was you and the Buffs, you and Colorado. For a Missouri guy.
Well, I fit right in. McCartney's a Missouri grad.
I know.
Barnett's a Missouri grad.
The Mizzou crowd.
Yeah.
But when you started working, you know, CU was really an ascendant football program. They had come close to the top, but they were about to reach the top with you riding shotgun with Bill McCartney.
Yeah, you know, ascendant. That's a good word. And I started covering them in '88 when Channel 4 hired me. Roger Ogden, who you know Roger well, and Marv Rockford. In my interview with them, when they told me I had the job, they said, "We want you to get in the back pocket of the CU football program."
You did.
And I was blessed. I mean, I flew on the team plane. I hosted the coaches shows after Logan had to stop doing them because he started coaching football high school. But, you know, it was just such an incredible run. Starting in '88, you know, they lost 2 games they should have won at Nebraska. JJ just dropped the football running down the field, and then at home against Oklahoma. They should have won those games. And then they turned around in '89.
But that was the thing. They had to beat those 2 teams at some point if they were going to get where they would go.
Yep.
And it felt that year like we can't beat them.
Yeah.
We can't beat them. But it didn't feel like that to Bill McCartney. He was unwavering in his faith in many ways.
Oh, you know, and there's another huge influence in my life, you know. So I started getting to know Coach in '88, and I was intimidated by him then.
Sure.
And we were the home of the Buffs, and I would do the sidelines. Ron and Logan would be up in the booth, and I'd be on the sidelines. And so McCartney was contractually obligated to talk to me.
Like all coaches, loves the halftime interview.
That's the favorite thing they like to do, right? And so in Channel 4, we hosted all the games that the national networks didn't pick up. So we had the dog games. Like back then, K-State was terrible. Right. Iowa State, Missouri was terrible. And it seemed as if the Buffs, you know, they'd be 35-point favorites in these games, and they were frequently just going through the motions in the first half
when they should be
cruising. So here comes McCartney, and I'm the first person.
Hi, Bill.
And,
how's it going?
Oh, and I more than once, you know, I'd ask what I thought was a fairly benign question because I knew he didn't want to talk to me. He would say, "That's the dumbest question I've ever heard in my life," and off he would go.
Rule 1 of coaching: take umbrage.
Be
irate with you and your questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it was, and frequently his wife Lindy, bless her heart, she's no longer with us either, but she'd call me the next day and say, "Mark, don't take it personally." You know, he's
yelling at the team through you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was kind of like, I was the dress rehearsal of what he was going to say to the team in there. But
I want to talk to you a lot about Coach McCartney because of your long-term relationship with him. But I want to tell you a quick story for me because I got here in 1982, and I was extremely young, extremely over my head. But I went out there for spring practice in April, I think, of 1982. Chuck Fairbanks is still the head coach, who I knew was a prickly guy. And the team's not good.
Yeah.
And the situation's not good. And they say, "We'll have you do a live shot from spring practice with Fairbanks." I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's my
I
job.
go out there, and we're standing there, and he's really seemingly fine. And it's one of those spring windy days in Boulder, and the microwave dish is doing this, and they can't get the signal, so we never do it. Coach says, "All right, I'm out." And I go, "Fine." Yeah. And then he was gone, like 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
And then they go on their search, and they wanted to hire Chuck Shelton out of Drake because they'd lost to Drake, and they ended up kind of settling on this guy, Bill McCartney. And Bill McCartney then, as far as what I remember, in 1983, because I'd been covering a lot of prep sports, he convinced the 2 top players in the state to stay and play with him, John Embry and Eric McCarty. And he got those two guys. And for all the changes that would subsequently come, that was a big step because the best players weren't staying in Colorado.
Right, which is a problem they have today.
Yeah, they're back to that.
But yeah, I mean, McCartney was able to put a fence around the state and keep, and Colorado's grown a lot since, 40-some years later. But he was able to keep all the great players at home. And then he was tremendous in going into South Central L.A., Houston, New Orleans, Detroit, and get the great black athlete.
Yeah.
And he would talk frequently about his recruiting strategy. And whenever he went into the home of a recruit, especially in those communities where it's a big deal when the head football coach of a rising program, ascending program. I might steal that from you for a while.
You got it.
I got it. I'll give you credit one time. But he'd always talk about, because frequently there'd be, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, just the whole family shows up, because this is their boy, And McCartney, he said, I'd always go in and I'd say hi to everybody. And then, and first one to say hi to was mom. And then I'd go into the kitchen and I'd get a chair and he'd come back out and sit right in front of mom.
Yeah.
And start talking to her as to why your son coming to the University of Colorado is going to be the greatest thing that ever happened to him.
But all those coaches are car salesmen. They have the gift of gab. They can walk into a room and sell you anything. Mm-hmm. But Bill had a sincerity about him that I think translated, that maybe was a little bit better than, without naming names, some of the other college football coaches who clearly were selling you on something that was good for them. Yeah.
Yeah. And, Coach Mack, he'd talk about this all the time, and I was very blessed that I was one of his caregivers to his final days. Mm-hmm. I spent Fridays with Mack, and he had a real tender heart for the black community. And so many of these athletes that he was going in to recruit, there was no dad around. And
that was a common thread.
That was a common thread. And so he would sit right in front of mama and basically be like a father figure. He'd walk out of there, and a lot of those moms would look at their sons and say, you're going to go play football for that guy.
It was bringing the black athletes from those other communities to Boulder wasn't simple. And it wasn't simple in Boulder either. Yeah. That too was a bumpy road at times. Mm-hmm. He had some struggles there.
Yeah. And he always loved to talk about when he would pick up a recruit at the airport, and they'd always stop at the scenic overlook.
Yeah, sure.
And he'd say, Boulder. Welcome to heaven on earth. And those were such special times. And then the relationship still to this day, a lot of those guys, Hagan, Bieniemy, Flanagan, Alfred, I'm still close, Alfred, all those guys, it's so wonderful to see him, to have a front row seat to the greatest stretch in Colorado history, and how they are so bonded with the loss of Sal and that one heartbeat season, and the next year the fifth down, and all the other things. It's so special.
Bill, post-coaching, you stayed close with him, and as you said, you stayed close with him through his struggles towards the end and the end itself. Mm-hmm. And I never got to know him that well, obviously professionally, and I did get to play one round of golf with him. And I remember it very well because we discussed religion, which is extremely important to Bill and not all that important to me. And I was very comforted by his willingness to understand my view, my life, my take on religion. Mm-hmm. It wasn't as though I was anything less or I was wrong. It was just made for an interesting discussion. But religion was always first and foremost with him, it seemed like.
Well, definitely. And a big part of, I imagine you might have been there after the 94 season. Salam goes over 2,000 yards. Everybody in the post game is expecting the big celebration that he had kind of locked up the Heisman Trophy and all that. And Platty comes in and says, hey, get in this other room. because Max got an announcement and he had resigned.
Yeah.
And it was shocking to everybody. But he told me the story frequently that, and this kind of speaks to his faith, that earlier in the season after a big win, you know, they go to church on Sunday. Everybody's just loving on Mac. Way to go, coach! And then they sit down, and there was a guest preacher that day, and this preacher was talking about, you can tell what kind of man a dude is by looking into the eyes of his wife. And Mac turned and looked at Lindy, and all he saw was pain, because Mac had put football before everything else in his life, and so it just, right then he said, I got to quit doing this.
He made a decision. I mean, big life change.
Yeah.
Your sportscasting career at Channel 4 ended because
they eliminated my job.
Yeah.
And then I went over to Channel 9 for 4 years.
But how long ago was that? Did you leave?
I came in '88.
Right.
I always used to joke with McCartney, when I showed up, you guys started getting good.
It's because
'88 to 2006. So almost 20 years.
Because I look at the business now, and obviously the business is radically changing, and it's not just changed, it's still changing.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, obviously I'm an old timer. I look at it and I go, it's not changing in a really positive way right now. But was that, when they eliminated your position, was that also part of that, the sudden economizing of TV news, do you feel?
Yeah. You know, it had gotten to the point where outside of a main anchor and a weekend person, you know, we used to, and you guys had big staffs too, but, you know, at one point, our staff, our Channel 4 sports staff, was Ron, Les, Marcia, me, Rogat. You know, we had 5 on-air personalities. And as the industry began to shift, because just not as many people were watching local television.
Yeah.
So the revenues aren't it. And so they kind of looked and said, all right, what's McIntosh do? Well, he's not our main anchor. He's not our weekend anchor, but he hosts a lot of shows. He does a lot of things that nobody else will do, like run the Boulder and talk to people,
right,
or cover the international. Nobody else, like golf. So,
right,
you know, that kind of stuff. So it was just economics, the industry shifting.
How big a jolt? I mean, did you see it coming? Feel it
No,
coming?
I didn't see it coming at all. I was called up into the principal's office on the 3rd floor. Roger had moved on.
That was probably not good news.
Well, yeah, I didn't know exactly what was going on. You know, just kind of, I say, Mac, I think Marv was the news director, or excuse me, the general manager by then, Marv Rockford.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he was honest. Go, Mac, you know, we love you, did a great job, but we just can't afford, you know, we got to downsize the sports department. And so they eliminated my job, but it so happened that I was hitting balls at a country club on the west side of town, and I happened to be hitting balls next to a guy that you've already mentioned by the name of Mark Cornetta.
The general manager at 9 News, yeah.
And so, you know, that's how, you know, Cornetta and I kind of got to know each other out there.
Golf to the rescue.
Yeah, exactly.
So you weren't cast into the universe and having to figure it out. You suddenly were able to make a sequence.
Well, you know, he said, because I had also started just kind of based upon my life story of things not going planned, pretty successful athlete, hurt, gone, you know, and then industry shift. I had started talking about overcoming adversity, that life will poke you in the eye, you know, and become a student and not a victim of the experiences of life, et cetera. And so Cornetta invited me to come talk to a sales team. And after I got done talking to the sales team, he said, hey, the current co-host with Denise, just doesn't seem to be good chemistry there. It's kind of 2 alphas banging heads, I think. And he goes, why don't you go down there and sit down with Denise and just do it? And Denise and I hit it off from the get-go.
Pretty easy to work with.
Oh, you know, it was interesting. And I talk about this all the time, that as a sports guy, and I know you get the same thing, people just walk up to you and want to talk sports, you know, and we like sports. We'll do that till the cows come home. But the 4 years that I co-hosted Colorado and Company, women would walk up to me all the time, like in the grocery store. I'm a single dad, you know, I'm getting my peanut butter and my cereal. I'm just picking up items, and I could see out of my peripheral vision this woman just marching down the aisle toward me.
On that show.
And Mark, what is Denise doing with her hair these days? And I go, I don't know. And that lipstick she had on the other day, that stuff's hideous. And then most of them would go, are you two married? And I go, no, she's younger than my second ex-wife. I'm trying to get a little smarter about this, It
is funny because I had Romy on, I've had Kim on, and I've always now in 45 years of doing this been stunned at what people will say to female on-air talent about their weight, their hair, their dress, and especially now with social media and direct contact with people are rough.
And I love women. I'm on my third marriage here. I love women, right? But women can be brutal toward other women.
Yeah.
And Drew DeMack was the producer of that show. Denise and I would come off the set afterward, and we're having fun. And Drew would say, listen to this one. And he'd play, and just I mean, it's not easy. And especially, I think of Romy, as the first female main sports anchor in town.
A lot of people weren't going to accept it no matter what, because that's just how they are.
Yeah.
So when you talked about the coaching that you did with the 9 News sales team, you've written a few books. Had you already at this point written any of these books or started to do some of the life coaching that I've known you for?
Yeah. That was, it kind of started after my second divorce. I was going to a divorce recovery class.
Okay, good. Get help if you need it, right?
Well, I've always believed, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right? So what was I bringing to the table that I had 2 marriages and I had a child from each marriage? What was I bringing to the table that was resulting in this? And so Mile High Church out on the west side of town. Just always loved the spirit of that place. And I was, so I went to a divorce recovery class there, and I kind of shared my story of, a pretty decorated athlete, projected to be a first-round selection in the '76 amateur baseball draft, center fielder, run, throw, field, hit with power. Then that goes away, and then divorce is falling apart, and or marriage is falling apart. And the woman that was leading the divorce recovery class said, you need to start telling that story. And so, okay. And so I started, and that's when I started
writing it?
Writing and stuff.
Just to clarify for people, your injury, because you were ticketed to play collegiate D1 sports and baseball, football at Mizzou. Terrific athlete.
Yeah.
And then you had an injury that changed all of that.
Yeah. In a high school basketball game, of all things. But, in football, I was an athlete playing quarterback, like Hagan.
Yeah.
I was much like Hagan or, like
okay,
Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
Yeah. But mainly
couldn't catch me.
With the ball in my hands, I was dangerous, And baseball, I was a center fielder, and baseball was my ticket because I'm 5'10". At that, I was about 185. But just a couple of days after I had signed my letter of intent to play at Mizzou, this is February of 1976, and a couple of months before projected to be first or second round pick in the draft, and I was going to go that route. Played for a very good high school basketball program, and I was a point guard on that team. And I was running down the floor. We were running back on defense, and then one of my teammates knocked the ball away, so it was a turnover. So I turned, and I'm running back to the other end. Teammate just throws a pass, and I was going to catch it almost like a wide receiver and lay it in for an easy 2 points. We were killing this team. A guy on the other team was running across the floor. As I was looking back to catch it, he lunged to knock the ball away, missed the ball, and poked me in the eye. It drove my eyeball kind of back, and it hit a nerve, which led to a rapid drop in blood pressure, and I fainted and just went down on my whole upper left side.
So the collision with the floor is a brain injury.
Yeah, I suffered a severe concussion. Broke all the bones in my middle ear that control your equilibrium and depth perception.
Oh, man.
So I couldn't judge fly balls anymore.
Yeah.
When I went down, I tore up all the rotator cuff muscles in my left shoulder. I'm left-handed. I couldn't throw the way I used to, and I'm deaf in my left ear from bam.
Just an accidental 1 second out of nowhere collision.
Poke in the eye. And so that's kind of the basis of my, life coaching is life will poke you in the eye. I mean, we all get poked in the eye. I know your history, you know mine.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody out there watching is probably dealing with something right now.
They've had it, or they're having it,
or it's coming down the road. I mean, it's his life.
I don't know about that one, but
yeah. I mean,
could be.
Yeah, and so just try to encourage people that life will poke you in the eye, but it's what we do with it.
Well, you've done that throughout your careers because the television life. I think after 18 years, you thought this is going to be what I'm going to be a sportscaster until I walk away.
Yeah.
Then you adapt smoothly to Colorado and Company, a different type of show, but still an on-air presence. But what happens after Colorado and Company?
So what happened after Colorado and Company is that I started working real closely with the Denver Rescue Mission. Mm-hmm. We've been around this town a long time. This town has changed a lot.
Yeah.
And, about 20 years ago, or let's see, it was, about 2006 is when I left Colorado and Company. 2010. But anyway, just started seeing more and more guys on the streets of Denver.
Sure.
And I just felt a tug inside. McIntosh, after I go back to my college days, initially after I got hurt, I was lost. I kind of made a decision, by golly, if I can't be the best athlete, I'm going to be the best partier. And I gave it the good old college try, but I'm
commitment.
A much better athlete than I was a partier. But, and like Mac, for the black community, for me, I'd see these guys and I kind of knew only God's grace, that could have been me.
I think of that all the time. That's a fine line we don't even know we're walking.
By the time I was a senior at Mizzou undergrad, and it was obvious that my career was over, and the guys that I used to compete against, Kellen Winslow was a teammate that was going on, Larry Drew, we were,
players.
And Rick Sutcliffe and Bob Dernier and others, all these friends of mine that, we were
in the
teammates.
Same club, going in
we were
the same
club,
direction.
heading in the same direction. And they're all moving on and achieving their dreams. And I was like, what the heck am I going to do with my life? And, there were so many nights I drove home just blind drunk from the bars of Columbia, Missouri. And I never got a DUI. I never hit anybody. And I did never hit anything and, become a paraplegic or something. It's just, and so I just had a real tender heart, and I'm seeing all these guys on the street. So I walked into the Denver Rescue Mission and just said, what can I do to help? They said, well, need somebody to run the Thursday morning devotion. J. Earl Krebs. I just did my impersonation of J. Earl Krebs. And I started doing that, and I just love working with these men. And to this day, I've been doing it for 15 years now. Work with the guys in the New Life program.
Okay.
And these are guys that are struggling, displaced men. And so we walk beside them.
And still.
Yeah. 3 times a week I hang out with those dudes.
Good for you, man. That's God's work for sure. Your vest tells a big story, and we're going to talk a lot about it. The Transplant games are coming to Denver in a couple months. Denver's hosting it for the first time.
Yep.
And you're a big part of the host committee.
Chair
of the host committee to bring it to town. But because of your personal transplant life story, I think it's important that we know how you became somebody to benefit from organ transplants.
Yeah. Well, it all started about 3 years ago right now. I've got my neighborhood gas station that, I think like most dudes, when we pull in and we're gassing up, we go inside. We whip crap on them. They whip crap on us. We talk about the Broncos or whatever, and walk back out feeling good about ourselves. And so I walked into my neighborhood gas station, and the guy that usually we banter back and forth, he looked at me and said, McIntosh, you look like crap. Your face is falling off your head. And I could tell he was serious.
He wasn't just pulling
No,
it,
he wasn't just giving me grief. He was dead serious. I mean, and for whatever reason, I could tell that he was serious. And so I immediately stopped into my doctor's office, which happens to be right on the way home, and said, I described what had happened there, and I said, I want to get checked because, and this is the one public health announcement I'll make here, I was losing weight, I wasn't sleeping well, I was going to the bathroom all the time, and there was a lot of foam in my urine. But I kind of chalked it up to being an old man.
You were just brushing it off like this is how
I'm
you
getting
age.
old. I'm 64 years old.
Right.
You know, that's just the way it is. And so I had kind of ignored that. And so then my buddy says, you look like crap, face falling off your head. I make an appointment. I describe some symptoms. And so my doc says, we got to check your kidneys. And they checked my kidneys, and they found out my kidneys are failing. And so anybody out there, if you're losing weight, you're not trying, you're not sleeping well, you're going to the bathroom all the time, and you notice a lot of foam in your urine.
You checked those 4 boxes, and you checked all 4.
I checked them all. And if you have a lot of foam in your urine, either you've had a long night out drinking beer, or that's your proteins. You're flushing your proteins out of your body. That's why I was losing weight, and I wasn't trying, because I was flushing all my protein. So they did a kidney biopsy and revealed I have a rare and incurable blood cancer called amyloidosis.
Now, amyloidosis, you talk about blood cancer and bone marrow, right?
Well, yeah, it's a blood cancer, and amyloidosis is a form of blood cancer. Mm-hmm. And it's where your bone marrow, your plasma proteins that flow through your blood vessels to your body, they get out of whack and they clump together, and they'll attack your heart, lungs, liver, nervous system, kidneys. Might attack all of them, might go after a couple of them. It was after my kidneys big time and after my liver.
So you now find out you have this incurable, is probably the word that you heard in bold print in your mind. So where do we go? What do we do?
You know, I was driving home with my wife because we had an appointment because we knew something was going on. And finally they do the diagnosis, and we're driving home because I thought I was just going to start outpatient therapy. I needed chemotherapy for the amyloidosis, and I needed to get on dialysis because it was destroying my kidneys. But we were halfway home, you know, a 10-minute drive from Anschutz to our house, and they said, turn that car around and get back here, because I was so sick, I was close to dying from kidney failure. So they immediately threw me into dialysis and chemo at Anschutz. I had my first chemo treatment on my 65th birthday.
So you literally were driving, doing something else when they said, we're going to start chemo now.
Yeah.
And we're going to start dialysis now.
Yeah.
That sounds...
Well, and there's something that once you enter the kidney world, your GFR is a very important number. And my GFR, like most people, GFR, you know, if you're healthy and you got 2 kidneys, your GFR is probably up there 65, 70 at our age. You know? But mine was less than 4.
Oh, so it's not
so
even
they just
non-functioning.
Just turn around. You know, you might not survive another night at home. You know, and so it's very rare. Amyloidosis. There's only like 100,000 people on the planet. Out of like what we have 8 billion people now or something, 100,000 of us.
It's a lot.
There's a lot.
There's plenty of us.
Yeah.
So you have this rare disease. They rush you into chemo and dialysis. Psychologically, I'm thinking your body is going through everything from kidney failure to these sudden harsh treatments. And this is the guy who tells us, if life pokes you in the eye, just get up and keep going. I would imagine that day wasn't hey, everything, you know, I'm just going to, I mean, how do you get through it emotionally and mentally? And, you know, you're with your wife and she's
scared to death.
Yeah, everybody. I mean, I'm trying to understand how those 12 hours went for the poke in the eye guy.
You know, it was shocking
Yeah.
One, because it's amazing how you can still kind of function when you're on the verge of kidney failure, because I was still kind of doing everything I do, right? And then suddenly you realize, oh my God, I got an incurable, rare blood cancer that's trying to kill my butt. And so I think shock was the first thing.
Yeah.
And then the treatments and everything just started so quickly. I mean, I turned around, went in, checked in, boom, dialysis and chemo, and so I didn't really have time to even think about it.
Is that maybe better? I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
you just like.
But I must admit, and it's a credit to the excellent health care I got, and all this was out at UC Anschutz,
right?
Which I know is near and dear to
Yeah,
your all's heart. Yeah. And my oncologist. So this is a rare blood cancer. My oncologist at UC Anschutz, his name was Peter Forsberg.
Okay.
The first time I meet him, I go, I thought you made enough money.
He's a great player.
Hockey.
You thought he was good on the ice.
But yeah, so I think shock, and then it was just so quickly that I was being treated. I don't really ever remember a whole lot of contemplation about what the hell is going on.
There's no time to dwell on
no
life.
time to dwell on it. But and then and then my faith. I've just I've had a lot of things happen in life that I did not plan. The injury, the divorces, the job layoff. To this day,
stuff that happened to you.
Yeah, I didn't ask for any of it. Now I've got this. But I've just always believed that God's got a plan. I don't know. There were nights, definitely, I go, God, I got no idea what you got in store here, but I'm just going to
trust you,
faithfully walk and believe that you've got a plan. And then I sit here today knowing that all this has led to becoming a huge advocate for organ donation and wellness, because we have a growing kidney crisis in America that we have to reverse, especially in communities of color, and it's led to hosting these games and everything else. So, and to get to know my donor, she's like a sister.
There's a lot here.
I'm flying all over the place.
No, I want to get there too. So you now begin these treatments, but at that point, they already know that you are going to need a new kidney. You're going to need another one. The ones you have aren't going to get it done.
Well, great question. Initially, I was diagnosed with acute kidney failure, which is different than chronic. Once you have chronic, you go on the transplant list. So initially, I was diagnosed with acute. And the 9 months that I had hemodialysis, that's where I had these 2 catheters in my chest, and 3 times a week, I would go for 4 hours, get hooked up to a machine, and they literally just pull all your blood,
dialysis,
purify it, and put it back in. We were hoping my kidneys would wake up.
Oh, okay.
But finally, after 9 months, they said, McIntosh, I know you're a competitor and you don't like to surrender, but your kidneys are not waking up. You need a transplant. And so then that's when...
When I hear the stories of transplant lists, they all sound sad in that it sounds like it's very difficult. The list is long, and the likelihood of a match, and there's all of these impediments between successful transplant. Your path was pretty good by comparison.
I was very, very fortunate. Yeah. We've got 100,000 people on kidney transplant lists today in America.
And we're talking about just kidneys now.
Yeah, just kidneys.
Yeah.
There's about 120,000 people in America that need transplants for heart, lungs, liver, kidneys. 85% are for kidneys.
It's kidneys.
Yeah. And so I quickly realized when you chain a curious guy, with a journalistic background to a machine 3 hours or 3 days a week for 4 hours, I'm just sitting there.
Going to be reading a lot.
Yeah. And realize we got 100,000 people on kidney transplant lists. We only get about 35,000 transplants a year. Most of those are deceased organs that aren't as good as a live organ. And the problem's getting worse. Listen to this. We've got 550,000 people on dialysis in America today. it's projected to go to 1 million in the next decade.
Oh, almost double in a decade.
Because of our lifestyles.
Yes, I presumed that.
High blood pressure, diabetes, and excessive weight, which are on the rise in America, are absolutely horrible for your organs, especially your kidneys.
Tell me about your donor and how the transplant went and how you got to know your donor.
Yeah. So my donor, Kathy Hitchcock, she lives down in Pueblo West.
Okay.
First time I introduced her, I said, Kathy's from Pueblo. She goes, Mark, I'm from Pueblo West.
The distinction.
There's a difference. There's a difference for all you people watching down in Pueblo. But she got tested long ago because her husband, Kirk, needs a kidney. She got tested, not a match. But the transplant world has become sophisticated enough that there's an organization called the National Kidney Registry, and all the transplant centers work with them. You can register with them, and you can just share your spare with them, and then you get a voucher that moves, in her case, Kirk, her husband, to the top of the list for a compatible match because they weren't a match.
But because she offered,
she shared
tested,
her spare.
He elevates on the list.
Yeah,
so it's good for her as well.
A KC buddy that I've known forever. He just donated at Advent Health Porter. 69 years old.
Oh man!
And donated, and now his family. He was able to list 10 family members that if down the road, his spouse, children, grandchildren, by chance have kidney issues, that family has a life insurance policy.
What's the test like?
The test is not easy. The gate is narrow to donate. First, you just take a online questionnaire because there are certain things, if you had certain type of cancers and stuff, you're just automatically kicked out of the pool. But if you pass that initial questionnaire, then you do a blood test. And it's an extensive blood test. And
extensive in what they test for.
It's
not a different test than normally. They take blood like they normally do.
They take a lot of, because they're checking for a lot of things.
Right.
We call it the $1 million checkup, because you're going to find out everything that's going on in your body health-wise. And so that's part of when I'm out promoting organ donation and wellness and trying to get people to just go get tested. We talk about it's free. It's $1 million checkup. And even if you decide, or they say you're not healthy enough, you might discover an illness that you had no idea you had. So the life you saved might be your own. And then if you do go ahead and donate, like my buddy just did, you get a voucher. And so that's kind of how the testing process, but it takes time. And a lot of people get discouraged, and that's one of the things that we're advocating for is the system has got to be streamlined so that people that are interested, sometimes it's so difficult, they just go,
it's too much work.
Don't
have time.
Yeah. And so
Kathy, your donor, and you it's not necessary for you to know each other.
No.
But you can check a box and say, I would like to meet my donor, or I would like to meet my recipient. You and Kathy both check that box.
Yeah. And I shared the story before. I think we went on the air, but at Advent Health Porter, it so happened that my wife and her large contingent of girlfriends and a couple of my buddies, and then Kathy's sister and another person, my donor, they put them in the same recovery room, the waiting room,
on the transplant.
And my wife and her crowd can get pretty loud. And so my donor, Kathy, sister wandered over and said, is your husband receiving a kidney? Yeah. Well, my sister is donating a kidney. And it's not like you're...
Pretty simple math.
Yeah. And so the next thing you know, everybody's sitting together, which was against the rules.
But
they weren't happy.
Well, that's
the way
you didn't
it
make
works.
the rules.
Yeah.
So post-transplant, the donor's recovery time and the recipient's recovery time, what do they look like?
So I was up and walking the next day, and I was out of the hospital after 2 days.
Feeling different? feeling? I mean, you're still sore. You still had a...
Yeah, sore, but definitely felt healthier. And, and I was...
More like Mac?
My body...
Mac?
Yeah, because suddenly I didn't know anything about kidney disease until I was...
Sure.
And I don't think a lot of people do, and that's part of what we're trying to do moving forward here. But you have kidney disease, life's not fun because your kidneys are just absolutely critical.
Yeah.
And so I definitely had more energy, and I'm a pretty high energy guy to begin with. But
so you're up and around
a
day later. And what about Kathy?
Kathy was out of the hospital after a couple of days, and then she had one little hiccup where she had to come back. She had a slight little infection. Mm-hmm. They just hit her with some antibiotics pretty hard for a day. And, she was back out. And, within 2 weeks, I was, like they say, no more than 10 pounds because they know I like to stay active and all that kind of stuff. And Kathy, she within a month, most people, when they donate, within a month, you're fine.
And this is a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now?
This was 20 months ago. 20 months. We're getting close to 2 years.
So the recovery time, and you told me something very interesting. You said now you actually have 3 kidneys.
Mm-hmm.
They said they don't extract a failing kidney. They just leave it be and hook up to the new kidney and put it somewhere else.
Yeah. So both of my kidneys were failing.
Non-kidneys.
But they just, my third kidney sits right here in my groin, mm-hmm. and they just bypass, they just rewire the plumbing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have to use anti-rejection medicine.
Correct. I have to take some, and I will the rest of my life because your body wants to naturally reject a foreign object.
Okay.
And what my angel in my midst offered to me is still my body wants. But the key there, the goal there for a recipient is to be on as little anti-rejection as possible because there are side effects. One of the big side effects is skin cancer. You've got to cover up.
So tell me, like, what you send this message, you carry this message, and you're so good mm-hmm. at it. But what do you tell people if we have people listening or watching today? What do you want them to know, or what do you want them to do? How can they help?
Well, there's 2 things, and they all revolve around this growing kidney crisis. We got lists are long, people dying on this list, and it's going to get worse because we have more people going on dialysis. So first and foremost, we want to educate people that they can share their spare. A lot of people, what? I can live just fine with 1 kidney?
I have 2, but I was given 2. You only need 1?
Yeah, well, and I've met a couple of donors. They go, God gave us 2 to give 1 away.
There you go.
Yeah,
okay.
And Mike Shanahan, he's lived just fine.
Playing football.
Yeah, more than 50 years. So the first thing we want is we want to educate. I was shocked when I started looking into this how uneducated most people are. And what we're really trying to focus our attention, middle-aged Americans, mm-hmm. you're past childbearing years, you've led a pretty healthy life, you believe in giving back to others, and you're looking around at the crazy world in which we live going, what can I do to help?
Yeah.
You can share your spare and save somebody's life. And so we're really trying to go after 45 to like 70. I've met a woman who was 73 years old and shared her spare.
And her kidney's as viable as a 25-year-old?
Yeah, well, what they would do with a kidney of that age, they'll put it in a person of that age.
Okay.
Like Kathy Hitchcock's 68.
Right.
I was 67 when I got. Yeah, so, I don't need.
And male, female doesn't matter?
Although I cry at Hallmark movies now, and I have a real desire to go shop. I don't know.
There's a new me inside of me.
I'm a woman trapped in a man's body.
Where would people go? Give them an online or what's the best resource for information?
So in terms of getting tested, mm-hmm. and we encourage everybody, again, it's free. You might discover you got something you didn't know you had. And then if you go through with it, you get the voucher. The National Kidney Registry is a wonderful place. And you can Google National Kidney Registry.
You'll get it.
And it'll pop up there, and it just says, are you thinking about donating a kidney? And they'll start with that questionnaire and stuff. And then the other thing that we're really trying to encourage people is wellness. We have got to get in better shape, and we're really going after our younger generations and just trying to educate children, especially of color, about the dangers of high blood pressure, diabetes, and excessive weight, because it's getting out of control and it disproportionately affects communities of color.
So
organ donation and wellness.
So we have a couple big things coming up. Donor Awareness Month is in April.
Yep.
How does that help communicate the message you and I have been talking about here?
Well, it helps tremendously. And that obviously there's just a whole lot of notoriety and publicity around it. But I like to joke, every month should be donor awareness because, again, the problem's bad and it's getting worse.
1 month isn't going to fix it.
Yeah.
It's a start. It helps.
It helps. But, we just need, and there's a lot of noise out there. I mean, heart, cancer, and a lot of other things that there's only so much space, but kidney disease is out of control. And so I just kind of feel it's my job, spend the rest of my life I love going out and talking sports, just having a good time with people, but educate them about organ donation and wellness. But to consider sharing your spare, go to the National Kidney Registry. Just Google National Kidney Registry.
And then we talked about at the beginning that big June, the Transplant games are coming to Colorado, to Denver for the first time ever. You're the chair of the host committee. So tell us, what are the Transplant games and how, people I'm sure want to see it or get involved.
Yeah, and they can do all of them. The game's been around since 1990, held every other year. And it's considered the largest celebration of life in the world, given that it's recipients, donors, and family members of deceased donors. And there's 21 competitions that all of us, we compete for gold, silver, and bronze.
Olympic style.
Yeah. And there's all kinds of special events like a donor tribute for the deceased donors and their families. And then there's a quarter century club dinner that celebrates people that have lived 25 years or longer with a transplant. It's a big old party. So it's a 6-day sports and wellness festival. We're expecting 12,000 people coming to town. We need volunteers. You could compete if you're a recipient like me, a donor, or a family member of a deceased donor, or we have 8 of the competitions that are open to anybody. The 5K, Youth Olympiad, Lyrics for Life, which is a singing contest.
Nice.
Do you like to sing?
Me, no. I'm asked to stop often.
Ballroom dancing.
No, and you do have some like you say, 5K. There's some athletic stuff. There's also some stuff for people who maybe aren't as available to run or jump.
Yeah,
or
pub trivia,
dance.
cornhole.
Pub trivia.
Yeah, and so there's 8 events. It's called the Colorado Challenge that anybody.
Yeah.
So, the games are coming June 18th through the 23rd. We'd love just to invite everybody out there to get involved. You can volunteer. You can compete. You could support us.
You can spectate.
Yeah.
Come out and see it, be it, feel it.
TransplantGamesOfAmerica.org.
Okay.
Has all that information on it right there. Volunteer, compete, support, and all that stuff.
That's going to be a great event.
That's
going to be and it's funny because you think of, Denver often bids for these things, from a Democratic National Convention to, different conventions and the like. This one seems like one of the more unique and special ones, and I imagine it was hard to get it to come here. You had to outbid some other cities.
Well, it's interesting that they were ticketed for Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, yeah.
They had already made the announcement. So these games are produced by the Transplant Life Foundation out of Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Right.
They had announced Jacksonville, and but then Jacksonville hired a new mayor who came in and slashed the city budget 25%.
Okay.
So Visit Jacksonville calls the Transplant Life Foundation and says, sorry,
we're out.
Can't do it. So Transplant Life Foundation is going, what are we going to do? Well, somebody said to them, "But there's this guy out in Denver, used to be a sportscaster, community advocate, and he just got a kidney transplant, and he's yakking about it on social media and everything about organ donation and wellness." So they called me, and we got to talking, and I learned more about the games because I didn't know much about the games. But when you realize it's, a wonderful celebration of life, 6-day sports and wellness festival. It's my story, really, and I'm a storyteller, so that works. We're bringing 12,000 people to town, so it's good for the economy. And we're presenting these games as a springboard to a 10-year effort to restore Colorado as the nation's healthiest state.
Okay.
And then we have history on our side. Did you know that the first liver transplant in the world was done at what is now UC Anschutz? Dr. Thomas Starzl, back in 1963, did the first liver transplant.
Fantastic.
So I kind of got to thinking about all that stuff, and I said, let's do it.
Let's do it.
And so...
Well, we're looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Hey, one last thing I want to talk to you about, because you've done a lot of work in the name of one of our great friends, Irv Brown. And Irv, of course, for anyone who's new to town, or if you haven't been a long-time Denverite, Irv was Denver. Irv grew up here and was a great coach and an official and broadcaster, and he was everybody's best friend, and he really was everybody's best friend. But you've worked with the scholarship committee that Irv has been established in his name. Just tell us about that too. And him.
Well, you described Irv well, and like when I got here in '88, Irv and Joe were kings of the radio. And the Buffs were getting good. And then suddenly here comes the Buff guy showing up in town. So Irv would have me on a show a lot because I had stories that nobody else had. I mean, I was just lucky. They were right in front of me, And so that's how we got to know each other. And then obviously we became close over the years. And I did sports talk for about 5 years. And Irv and Joe's show came on right after my show. And so frequently, you'd walk
crossover.
in. Irv, get on in here. He'd always tell my story. And so when Irv passed, and then Greg Brown, his son, coached up at CU a couple of times. So I just had become close to the Brown family.
Sure.
And after Irv passed, we said, we got to do something to keep it alive. And I was already involved at MSU Denver as an adjunct professor and doing some things down there. And then learned that Irv was the first baseball coach at MSU Denver. And he's in the Roadrunner Hall of Fame. And we said, okay, let's start a scholarship at MSU Denver in honor of its very first baseball coach. So the Irv Brown Endowment Fund was established. We've given away the last 2 years. We've given away $20,000 worth of scholarships. We have a big sports conference to teach kids the business side of sports. We'd love to invite you to come be a guest and talk to the kids.
I have a lot of free time now.
Well, you can drag down Woody and Zap with you.
They have a lot of free time too.
Well, just bring the whole crew. You could maybe do your podcast from down there. But anywho, and so it's so much fun to offer opportunities to kids. Most of these kids are first generation. College attendees of color, a lot of them, and it in Irv's honor. And so we're getting ready for our third conference. We're going to give away $15,000 worth of scholarships this year, and we continue to build it. And anybody that would like to help us, you can go to Irv Brown Endowment Fund. We have a website, and you can
he was the best, and it's a great name to have on anything. Anything that's got Irv's name on it, is legit. Mac, I love seeing you healthy.
Thank you.
I love having you come by and spend some time with me, and I really look forward to both April and then June for the transplant games that you've brought to town. It's really great work on your part.
Well, thank you very much. I feel blessed to have a second chance at life, thanks to a donor and excellent health care. And I truly feel kind of called to, I got certain gifts when it comes to communication and all that, and I got the experiences, and I think
energy.
Shame on me. Yeah, I got the energy. Shame on me if I don't go out there and just try to, in a fun way, educate people about organ donation and wellness, because we've got a growing kidney crisis that we need to address.
Well, you're a great example of what can happen if people do participate and help each other out. It's great to see you. Thanks, Mac.
Good to see you, bud.
That was great having Mark McIntosh here, catching up with a great old friend, not just to me, but to so many people. But just to pitch again some of the important stuff he talked about. First, there's the Irv Brown Endowment Fund, which helps out at MSU Denver, so maybe make a note of that. But then we also talked a lot about transplant and organ donation. So the National Kidney Registry, which is kidneyregistry.com, you should certainly check that out. And then this June, here in Denver, the Transplant Games come to town. So check out transplantgamesofamerica.org, and you can learn a lot more about what should be a very special event. That's going to do it for this week's show. We hope to see you right back here again next week.